November 24th, 1971. A cold, rain-soaked night in the Pacific Northwest. On board a Boeing 727, somewhere between Portland and Seattle, the rear staircase suddenly swings open mid-flight. Wind and rain whip through the cabin. In the chaos, a man wearing a business suit and a black tie steps into the storm, vanishing into the pitch-black night. $200,000 in cash strapped to his body. No one sees him land. No one knows where he's gone. For the next 50 years, the world will be left wondering, who was D.B. Cooper? How did he disappear without a trace? And could a single daring act rewrite the rulebook on modern crime? But to understand this mystery, we must turn back the clock. The victim, in this case, isn't a single person. It's a whole plane load of ordinary passengers and the flight crew of Northwest Orient 305. Their short hop from Portland to Seattle should have been routine. Instead, it became a night that would haunt the FBI for decades. The man who called himself Dan Cooper appeared unremarkable, mid-40s, dressed in a neat suit, his behavior calm and calculated. He paid for a one-way ticket in cash, blending into the crowd. But beneath that quiet exterior was a mind trained in aviation. He seemed to know every detail about the Boeing 727 systems, especially its unique rear staircase, a feature that would become the centerpiece of his escape plan. Was he a seasoned professional, a desperate man, or something else entirely? Whatever his true identity, one fact is clear. On that night, a legend was born, and the world would never see air travel the same way again. The unfolding tension. On that fateful evening, the mask began to slip, not through panic or violence, but by a quiet act that would change the flight's fate. Somewhere above the clouds, Dan Cooper handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. At first, she thought it was just another unwanted advance. But the words inside were chilling in their simplicity. I have a bomb. In his briefcase, wires, red cylinders, a threat that left no room for doubt. Calmly, Cooper outlined his demands. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready at the Seattle airport. No heroics, no alarms. If the airline complied, everyone would walk away unharmed. But Cooper's expertise quickly became apparent. He instructed the pilots to fly at a specific altitude, below 10,000 feet, and with the landing gear down and wing flaps set to 15 degrees. It was a risky configuration, designed not for comfort, but for a swift getaway. He had chosen the Boeing 727 for a reason. Only this aircraft allowed the rear staircase to be lowered mid-air, an escape route known to only a select few. Throughout it all, Cooper remained composed. He never shouted, never panicked. Every move seemed practiced, almost rehearsed, a fact that would puzzle investigators for years. Was this a man driven by desperation, or was he executing a plan he'd played out in his mind 100 times before? With each passing minute, the pressure mounted in the cockpit and the cabin. But Cooper's intentions were clear: secure the ransom, ensure a safe passage for the hostages, and then disappear, leaving behind a mystery that would baffle authorities and capture imaginations for generations. The night of the crime. Timeline unfolds, Seattle, November 24th, 1971. After tense hours circling above the city, Northwest Orient Flight 305 finally touched down. By now, the cabin was thick with anticipation and fear. True to his word, Cooper released all 36 passengers, their ordeal over in a single night. But for the flight crew, the nightmare was only beginning. The exchange was coldly efficient. Authorities delivered the cash, $200,000 in used $20 bills, along with 4 parachutes, precisely as Cooper had demanded. He examined the ransom, checked the parachutes, then calmly let the plane refuel. Throughout, he kept his cool. No sudden moves, no hint of agitation. Was this the mark of military discipline, or simply nerves of steel? As the clock ticked past 7:40 p.m., Cooper issued new instructions. The plane would take off once more, this time headed south for Mexico City. The route was mapped out meticulously, with a scheduled stop in Reno for fuel. The flight plan was unusual. Low altitude, gear down, flaps at 15 degrees. The kind of specifics only an aviation insider would know. At 7:42 p.m., an indicator light in the cockpit flickered on. The aft stairs had been lowered. In the darkness of the rear cabin, Cooper made one final radio transmission. "Everything's fine." Moments later, the crew felt a sudden shift, a sharp drop at the rear of the plane. They didn't know it then, but history would record this as the moment D.B. Cooper vanished. By the time Flight 305 landed in Reno, the mystery was complete. The rear stairs still hung open, buffeted by cold desert air. Cooper and the money were gone. No trace, no evidence of a struggle, just a baffled crew, an empty seat, and a legend about to be born. The investigation, evidence, and dead ends. The hunt for D.B. Cooper began before the Boeing 727's engines even cooled in Reno. FBI agents, local police, and the media all converged on the scene. But what they found was as frustrating as it was intriguing. No sign of a struggle, no footprints, no discarded parachute or briefcase. Cooper had simply vanished into the night. Investigators started with the people who had seen Cooper up close. Flight attendants Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow described a man in his mid-40s, polite, strangely calm, even when issuing threats. Their composite sketch would become iconic. Sunglasses, neatly pressed suit, unremarkable features, the perfect ghost. But it was the physical evidence left behind that would shape the investigation for years. On Cooper's seat, agents recovered a black clip-on tie, J.C. Penney brand. Forensic analysis in later decades would find minute traces of titanium particles and rare metals embedded in its fibers. Clues, perhaps, to a life spent in aviation or heavy industry. Yet in 1971, these were just curiosities, fragments of a life they could not piece together. On the ground, search teams scoured the suspected drop zone. Dense forests, muddy riverbanks, inhospitable terrain stretching for miles around the estimated flight path. Early estimates pointed to the aerial and battleground area, but shifting wind calculations later refocused the search on the Washougal River basin. Still, no sign of Cooper. No body, no parachute, no money. Leads poured in by the hundreds. Suspects like Richard McCoy, Robert Rackstraw, and Kenneth Christensen surfaced, each with their own shadows and secrets. But as the months turned into years, DNA samples failed to match, alibis held up, and each promising theory dissolved into disappointment. The world was left to wonder. Was Cooper dead, lost in the wilds? Or had he truly gotten away, a shadow moving unseen beneath the surface of American life? Twists, revelations, and unanswered questions. As the years passed, the D.B. Cooper case only deepened in complexity. Each new clue seemed to spark more questions than answers. In 1978, a battered placard, once posted in a Boeing 727, was discovered along the original flight path. It contained detailed instructions for operating the rear staircase, lending weight to the theory that Cooper had indeed made his escape mid-air, braving the freezing winds and darkness below. Then, in February 1980, the investigation took another turn. On the muddy banks of the Columbia River, a young boy unearthed a bundle of decaying $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom money paid to Cooper. The find was electrifying, a tantalizing glimpse of the missing fortune. But it also posed new mysteries. How had the cash traveled so far from the suspected drop zone? Why was only $5,800 recovered, with no sign of the rest? Forensic analysis would uncover even more perplexing details. Diatom, microscopic algae, was found on the money, suggesting it entered the water months after the night of the crime, possibly in the spring, not in late November. This finding seemed to upend previous theories. Had Cooper hidden the money before perishing? Or had someone else handled it, introducing the bills into the river long after Cooper's disappearance? Advancements in science led to new examinations of the infamous black tie. Under the microscope, investigators found particles of pure titanium, rare in the early 1970s, found mainly in aerospace or metallurgy. Did this point to Cooper's true profession? Was he an engineer, a pilot, or something else entirely? Despite these developments, one thing remained certain. The more investigators discovered, the further away the truth seemed. The D.B. Cooper case, instead of drawing to a close, continued to evolve, casting a long shadow over law enforcement and capturing the imagination of generations. No verdict. The debate and the long shadow time moved on, but the Cooper case refused to fade into obscurity. By 2016, after more than 4 decades, the FBI officially closed its active investigation, Operation Norjack, having chased down over 1,000 suspects, dozens of confessions, and every wild theory imaginable. But the question at the heart of the mystery remained unsolved. Did D.B. Cooper survive his daring jump, or did he perish somewhere in the vast, unforgiving wilderness? For many investigators, the evidence suggested a grim fate. That night, the weather was brutal, near freezing, with rain and gusty winds. Cooper jumped into utter darkness, wearing only a business suit and loafers, carrying a heavy bag of cash and an unfamiliar parachute. No experienced skydiver would have chosen that gear. And yet, no body, no parachute, and no conclusive trace was ever found. The riverbank cache discovery at Tennebar only complicated the picture, raising new possibilities and doubts. Some argued Cooper must have died almost instantly, his body swallowed by the deep forests or swift rivers of the Pacific Northwest. Others, however, pointed to the meticulous nature of his plan, his calm under pressure, and the strange technical clues, like titanium particles on his tie. Was it really so far-fetched to believe he'd made it out alive, slipped away, and lived the rest of his days under a new identity? Through all the speculation, one fact stood unchallenged. Cooper's true identity and his fate remained a mystery. The case became folklore, inspiring films, books, and countless amateur sleuths. To this day, the legend endures. A man who walked into history and then, somehow, stepped off the map, leaving behind more questions than answers, and an empty seat on Flight 305 that no one would ever truly fill. Consequences and legacy, a lesson etched in history. The D.B. Cooper hijacking was more than just a crime. It was a turning point for American aviation. In the months that followed, the nation's skies were transformed. Airports installed metal detectors. Boarding passes became mandatory, and paying for tickets with cash was no longer enough to guarantee anonymity. Airline security, once an afterthought, became a daily reality for millions of travelers. One technical legacy was even more specific: the Cooper vane. This simple but ingenious device made it impossible to lower a Boeing 727's rear staircase in flight. closing the loophole that Cooper had so boldly exploited. With each new layer of security, the age of the airborne hijacker faded. In fact, after 1973, successful skyjackings in the U.S. dropped dramatically. But for all these hard lessons and sweeping changes, the Cooper case lingers in a peculiar twilight. Somewhere between criminal genius and folk hero, Cooper became a symbol, the last of the gentleman outlaws, operating with a strange code of conduct and nerves of steel. He harmed no one, chose his moment, and then vanished, leaving the world to puzzle over the details. What can we learn from this? In the end, the D.B. Cooper saga reminds us that even in a world of technology and rules, the smallest details, a strip of tie fabric, a fleck of titanium, or a few bills washed up on a riverbank, can turn an entire investigation on its head. The greatest mysteries aren't always solved. Sometimes they become legends, haunting the collective imagination for generations. And as for Cooper himself, his story stands as both a warning and a fascination, a testament to the enduring power of curiosity and the simple truth that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. If you found this case as captivating as we did, don't forget to like and follow our channel for more mysterious crimes and unsolved cases, because sometimes the truth is just the beginning.